Righto guys, welcome to Creepers, Cryptid and Paranormal Corner. Hope you've enjoyed the first episode. And episode 2 is going to be about an encounter I had with a Yowie early fishing one morning in Western Sydney. The encounter happened in December 2019. It was at the same time as all them bushfires that were burning the whole of Eastern Australia. My son had been born a few weeks earlier, and I had to talk the missus around to let me go and fishing and stuff like that. So the plan was if I go real early in the morning, that I could get back and give him a hand in the morning when they first got up. Most mornings I was in the kayak fishing by about 4 a.m, so I could paddle to a section I wanted to fish by daybreak, as sun up and sun down's always the best time to go fishing for Australian bass with lures. So the morning of the encounter was pretty straightforward. I hadn't done anything different, been to the same section the last couple of trips. I pulled up to the spot just before 4 a.m, unloaded the kayak, got my fishing gear out, chucked my GoPro on my chest mount, chucked my headlamp on and headed for the water. The walk down to the river's a little track through thick bush. It's about 50 metres from where you park. As I was heading down to the water, one of them water hens down at the river was going off its head, screaming and splashing around as anyone been by an Australian river to witness one of these silly birds having a freak out. They are so loud when they go off, so I was having a bit of a laugh as it caught me off guard and made me jump. So I got to the spot by the river where I launched the kayak. It's a bit of a struggle as you have to hang down the bank from a branch off one of the trees next to the river to get the kayak in without losing it and it washing down the river. So I got the kayak in pretty easy, loaded it up with all my fishing gear. Then climbed down the bank into the water and climbed into my kayak. I turned my GoPro off at this stage to save the battery. My plan was to set all my gear up ready to go and then paddle up the river about an hour and then take a few hours to fish my way back to where I got in, just so I could be back by about 8 a.m to help the missus with the kids. I never left the launch spot as the kayak was sitting still out of the river current. It was easy to set the gear up. I had to set one fishing rod up with a surface lure and attached it and chucked it into the rod holder behind my seat. I then grabbed another lure out and set up my next rod and chucked it in the other rod holder behind my seat. And then just hooked up all my rod leashes so then they wouldn't fall out of the kayak while I paddled up the river. And all I had to do now was organise the rest of my gear in the kayak and I was ready to head up the river. Once the kayak and all my gear was ready, I decided to roll a cigarette for the trip up the river. I didn't have to stop on the paddle up. I still couldn't see real well as it was only 10 past 4 at this stage. So when I go real early in the mornings, I have a little rechargeable lantern cross spotlight I got for a Chrissy present the year before. So I turned the lantern part on just so I could see a bit better. Once I rolled one smoke, I put it back in the packet and rolled another just to have now. But I couldn't find my lighter, so I had to rummage around a bit and I finally found it, and this is when stuff started to go real weird. As I lit the smoke, my lighter played up a few times, and once I finally got it to work, as soon as I lit the smoke, this is when something massive charged right out of the bush next to the track that I just used to come down from my car. The sound of the creature charging was so loud it was bigger than any cow or horse I'd ever heard in the bush. The creature smashed through the bush towards me within a metre of where I was sitting in my kayak right next to the bank. This is where shit got really weird. Within a split second from when it first charged me, I quickly flicked my GoPro on and looked up, and as I was saying before, I had my headlamp on. So when I put my head up, it lit the open section of the bank and the bush right next to me, but nothing was there. And this is when I noticed an odd noise in my ears. The only way I can explain it was like someone was trying to make the predator noise from those movies. This is where I freaked out a bit. This creature had just come through the bush right next to the track back to my car. I'm stuck here in my kayak. I can't get out and run for the car without this thing getting me. As this thing charged, the water hens in the area and further up the river just started screaming like crazy. I quickly snapped out of it and pushed off the bank of the river with my paddle to get to a safe distance away from the creature in the middle of the river. This is when I realised I still had the spotlight sitting in my lap, so I turned the lantern button off and quickly hit the high-powered spotlight. I lit the whole bank up so I could see better, and this is when I jumped up out of my kayak seat to stand up to see a bit better. There's just still nothing there. All the sound of the creature charging me, it was massive. There was no way it could have hid from me and my two lights. I lit the whole area up. It was like daylight. These two torches, it was that bright. And there was just no signs of anything. The whole time I could hear the noises in my ears still. It's bloody hard to explain the noise, but it was more like the predator noise, but a person trying to do it like a... It's bloody weird, I still can't explain it. But anyway, this is when I built up the courage and I paddled up to the bank right next to it. Just in case it was a wombat or a kangaroo or that, but still there was nothing there at all. There's no signs of anything. There was no bushes smashed up or anything. I still can't explain it now. There was not another sound after the creature charged towards me through the thick bush. I couldn't understand what was going on. I still had this noise belting in my ears, which was making me feel a bit weird and a bit sick. After searching the bank a bit more with my lights, I had another plan. I was going to yell out and try and spook whatever it was off. Maybe it'd run off and I'd be able to catch a glimpse of it. There was just one problem. I couldn't actually yell. I couldn't physically make a noise. Something was stopping me from yelling out. I still can't explain it. Some people are trying to say it was from fear, but I don't believe that. Like I was saying, I was in my kayak standing up right next to the edge of the bank, and I was still looking for the creature. If it was from fear, I wouldn't have been able to paddle up and have a look like that. After about 5 minutes of trying to yell out, I got this real bad feeling and sat down and paddled back in the middle of the river, never once taking the lights off the bank the creature was charging me from. Still nothing, no sound after the charge or anything, like not even a sound of the creature leaving. How can I not see it? Like, still, what the hell's going on? I can still hear this predator noise in my ear. It's still ringing. And I basically paddled around in circles to the middle of the river, and then I decided to stop recording with my GoPro to save the battery in case something else happened. After about 30 minutes had passed and still nothing, no sound from the bush, the noises in my ears were starting to get a bit fainter. I still couldn't yell. I still couldn't explain anything that was going on. This was in about 50 metres up the river from me. I heard a lot of movement in the bush and could start hearing this really odd noise. I couldn't explain that either. There was a weird animal call. As soon as the animal started to make the call, out of nowhere, the predator noise I could hear in my ears, it just disappeared. I didn't feel sick anymore. I don't understand what happened. It just stopped, like someone just flicked it off. This is when I flicked the GoPro back on and stood back up in the kayak to check the bank again with the torch, and still nothing was there. I still just kept paddling around in circles until the sun started to come up. I still had no plan on how I'd get back to the car, as the creature still hasn't left, obviously. Like, I didn't know what to do. So my plan of attack finally was to paddle up the river until the sun come up completely, and then I felt a bit safer to head for the car. When I first started to paddle off, I heard the animals up the river from me again make a few more noises and take off further up the river away from me. And after that happened, I never heard one more thing, like to the point of not even hearing a twig break or anything. I stopped recording on my GoPro and I turned it off, pulled my phone out, tried to call the missus and let her know what had happened. But that's odd, no phone service. I always have phone service at this spot. I've been here multiple times and never had an issue. What the fuck's going on? At this point, I couldn't wait to get home, just hoping nothing had happened to the missus and the kids and she'd try to call for help or anything. And I wanted to tell her what had happened and check out the footage. Hopefully I'd caught something on the GoPro I missed with my own eyes. I never did any fishing. I just paddled around basically in circles until I felt safe enough to head back and have another look at the area. Once I got back there, even after all that time, I never went any further than 50 metres from the area and never heard the creature leave. I sat around by the bank in my kayak looking closely and listening till about 7:30 a.m. and decided, fuck it, I got to get out and run for the car. So I quickly threw myself out of the kayak and onto the bank, grabbed onto the branch so I didn't fall back in the water and balance myself. I grabbed the kayak with my right arm and just dragged up the bank and ran for the car. I never took my eyes off the bush this creature had charged from, and there was no sign of anything but a massive flat spot under a big pine tree. Was this creature laying there the whole time watching me drag the kayak down to the water in the first place? And why didn't it charge me then? I sort of freaked out then. I ran for the car, threw all my stuff in the car without even packing any of it up properly. And I chucked the kayak on the roof as quick as I could and just strapped it down so I could get the hell out of there and get home. The drive home from the area is only about 10 minutes, so it wasn't too bad. But the whole time my head and my heart was just racing. What the fuck had just happened? What was it? It was huge. Why couldn't I see it when it first came out of the bush right next to me in the kayak? And I was so close in the kayak, like, it could have grabbed me easily. Why didn't it get me? And what the hell was that noise in my ears that whole time? It sounded like the predator. Still makes no sense. Why couldn't I yell out when I was trying to spook the creature out to see if it would move or make a noise? Like, what the hell happened then? Another question I kept thinking about in the drive home was, why didn't I hear the creature leave? Like, even if when it first Bluff charged me, it ran out and it was within a metre of me, I never heard it go back or anything. I never seen it. I still can't explain that. Like, and even after all those hours of me paddling around in circles, if anything had moved, I would have heard it. And what was the animal call I heard up the river later on? Like, whatever it was, when I heard that, it finally stopped the noises in my ears. I had no answers at all, but thankfully I had the GoPro going that whole time, and that's all I kept thinking about. It was, holy shit, maybe I actually caught something even on the camera on the walk down to the river. Like, I might have seen something out the side of the camera or anything. Like, oh, it was a bit worrying, like, what the hell was going to see. I could have caught it on the camera on the paddle back up to the bank just to have a look when I first got that torch out and stood up and had a look and stuff like that. I might have caught it then, but I didn't see it with my own eyes. It might have been just out the corner of my eye or something and missed it. Like, it was just, my head was just racing then, thinking about it, like, holy shit, what have I caught on the camera? I'd finally turned into me street. The 10-minute drive had turned into like an hour, felt like an hour and a half drive getting home, thinking about everything that had happened. I tore in the driveway, jumped out with any of my gear, left it all in the car except for the GoPro, and I ran inside. Once I got inside, I checked everyone was safe and sound. I said sorry to the missus about having no service on my phone, and she didn't even know. She hadn't tried to call me or anything. So I started to explain what had happened. I turned the GoPro on so I could check the footage. The footage I had of the walk down to the water with the kayak and that, it had nothing. So I had the GoPro facing the ground the whole time as I was dragging the kayak. So I was pretty disappointed about that. But then I thought, oh, it doesn't matter. I've still got a bit more to check. So I got a bit excited for the next bit of footage. The next bit of footage I was going to look at was when I quickly turned it on as the creature first charged me. This is when my heart started to beat a bit, and I got really nervous about what I was going to see. I even said to the missus, fuck, I'm getting really nervous now, and explained how I turned it on just as the creature started to charge. My heart sank. Corrupt file. What the fuck? It was corrupt. Nothing I did with it would start it. Now, this is a real odd bit. This GoPro hadn't even been 6 months old. I'd never dropped it. I'd never even put it in water, even though it was waterproof up to 10 metres. Never even been close to it. Kept it clean, tidy, everything. Always looked after it. Charged it perfect. Never overcharged or anything like that. So I tried resetting it, and I seen a thing on the internet you could reset a certain way so it'd actually fix corrupt files and stuff. Still nothing was working. I even tried taking the card out and I put it straight into the laptop. Everything on it was working bar this one clip. And the even odd part was when you went into the properties of the file and I did a bit of digging around in that, it still had the 22 minutes of record, but it had 0 kilobytes. So it was an empty file, but it still had the time, which doesn't make sense at all. So I tried putting it back in the GoPro, and this is when it got real weird. I tried to do the reset again, went into it, and I was just trying to open up the file different sorts of ways you can in the GoPro, and I realised that it was actually still taking up 22 minutes of my space on the GoPro, which didn't make sense because it had no space. It was taken up. It was an empty file. It was 0 kilobytes. So what the hell was going on? Like, I just couldn't explain anything. This is when I just started to feel sick. What the hell had happened? Why did it happen this day of all days? Like, this has never happened to me before. Why now? Why such an important bit of footage and it's just not working? I've tried a lot of things since. I've still got the file and everything, and no matter what I do with it, I've tried getting people to look at it for me and stuff like that, and it just still won't work. But it still takes up the space on the GoPro if I put the memory card back in it. After a bit of stressing out and stuff like that, I was just wrecked about it not working and that, like, it really got to me. Then I remembered, hang on a minute, I actually turned it back on again. There's still a chance I might actually catch the creature on the camera. And guess what? This file worked. The hairs on my neck stood up. It was like I was really scared and excited at the same time. I was like, come on, please. But nothing could be seen at all. I heard the odd sound up the river, like the animal call, and I got that on the camera and stuff like that. And you could hear the animals taking off after a while and like stuff like that, and you heard the water hens and all that sort of shit, but never seen anything. After looking into the animal call, I couldn't work out what it was. I found a few files on the internet and that, and it actually turned out it was a chital deer call. And I thought, that's a bit weird. I didn't think we had deer here and stuff like that, but I've been back a few times fishing again and actually seen there's probably a big group of probably 50 that are out there either direction, like, so there's probably about 100 odd within a kilometre of where I was launching, which is actually pretty cool. And the call it was actually making was actually one of their distress calls. So it was just, yeah, it was interesting. They might have known what was going on too. They might have picked up on the creature was there at that stage because of what had happened to me. Like, because they definitely took off at one stage as well, and you could hear them making it as they run up the river. And then I thought, oh great, it was just a deer that's charged me. But when I looked up the chital deer and that, like they're tiny. There's big dogs out there that probably weigh more than them. And that thing had chased me. If it charged out of the bush at me, I would have seen it as well. Plus, it wouldn't have made the noise this creature did. This creature was huge. I trained racehorses before for years and years, and this creature was a lot heavier than a horse running through the bush. And it was on 2 feet. Like, so you can rule out deer, wombat, kangaroo, goat, anything like that. To this day, I still struggle to even get in the river before sun up, like completely. There's no early morning fishing or anything like that, and it sort of ruined my catch rate. But it feel a lot safer doing it that way. Unless I'd probably go a bit earlier if I had a mate going with me and stuff like that. But by myself, nah, I'll wait till the sun's up. But as you'll find out over the next couple of weeks, when I do a few more episodes than that, I've had a few run-ins with cryptids, full daylight between 6:30 and 7 o'clock in the morning. So even that idea sort of stuffed me a bit now. I won't go fishing now unless I've got someone with me. You know what, over the next couple of days, I started having little things come back to me over other trips I'd gone really early in the morning that I hadn't even second guessed before. There was just a lot of odd things that actually happened to me in the early mornings, like before the sun had come up and stuff like that, that I hadn't even thought, oh, that might have been something, which I should have, because after having the encounter a few years ago with my family at my Nana Pop's farm, like I should have picked up on this stuff earlier than having this bluff charge to make me think about it. Just little things like paddling along 4 o'clock in the morning, no one around. All of a sudden, something starts following me in the bush, and this bush is where the spots I go to. It's that thick, man. Like you can't even see through it. You shine a torch up, nothing. You can't see nothing. It's that thick, and for something to follow me along the bush, an experienced bushman and stuff like even normal person, they'd struggle to get through there, let alone actually keep up with my kayak. Another little thing, like massive ghost gun one morning, started shaking like crazy, like we had dangerous winds, like it was going to snap in half. And after about 5-10 seconds, you think, hang on a minute, there's no wind around, there's not even a gentle breeze. What the hell's going on? And then you think, fuck it, doesn't matter, keep going. Like, had the torch on it, everything, didn't see anything. You could see the trees shaking like crazy. There could have been a creature behind it shaking it, trying to scare me off or anything. I'd been paddling along early one morning too, had rocks thrown at me, splashing in the water, shined the torch up, didn't see any little, I thought maybe some kids in the bush being smartasses, but like I said, 5 o'clock in the morning, what kid's going to be out throwing rocks at people in kayaks? Like, how do I not pick up on that? Kids aren't out there that early in the morning, let alone getting up to be able to throw rocks at people and try and scare them and stuff like that. But like I said, I just kept fishing all those times, didn't even bat an eyelid at it, didn't even think. There was even a time one morning, I think it was about 3:30 this morning, I was paddling along, all of a sudden I could see red eyes in the bush. Like, what the fuck? How did I not even think about that? Like, red eyes? Hang on a minute, there was no moon that night. I didn't have my headlamp on, I don't fish with me light on. That scares the fish off. Like, how did I not think about this shit before now? And all these little things I'm thinking about now, this was on a stretch of the river that goes through the main street of my town. Like, this wasn't 10 minutes away or half an hour away like other encounters I've had since and stuff like that. This is right in the main street. This is when I started to get real worried and stuff like that. But then I thought, this is 4 o'clock in the morning, 3:30 in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning. If these things wanted to get me, middle of nowhere or even in the main street, there's no one around. If the thing wanted to get me, they could have got me without even anyone even hearing anything. So maybe these creatures aren't actually as bad as some people make out. Like, multiple times something could have got me and it hasn't. Didn't have anything else happen for nearly a year. Like, not even a twig snapping when I was out fishing and stuff like that. But nearly a year to the day, in December 2020, I had another encounter at this same location. And this was I was with my brother-in-law at this time. It was during the afternoon. We'd gone out for a fish and we got carried away and got stuck in a storm and stuff like that. So we ended up paddling back to the car in full darkness, and I was a bit nervous and stuff, and I thought, nah, nothing's going to happen, and something did. So I'll get into that and tell you about it now. So the brother-in-law and I decided to go out for a fish one afternoon. We ended up going to the same spot. We just found a different launching spot, which is only about 5 metres difference. So Anyway, we decided we're going to paddle downriver this time. We'll go down about 25-minute paddle and then fish our way back to the cars and then get out before dark and then head home for dinner. So we'd paddled down to the spot we wanted to get to start heading back and having a fish. And it started to get real windy and these real odd clouds come over. I didn't know what they were, and I was asking my brother-in-law, as he flies planes and stuff, so he's pretty switched onto the weather and he knows all the different signs to look for when there's a big storm or lightning, stuff like that, like before it actually comes. So I was asking him about it and he was explaining to me what type of clouds they were. I can't remember the name of them now, but they're really weird. It's like the whole sky goes like the bubble wrap sort of thing. It's just perfect little balls everywhere in the clouds. He was explaining to me they only sort of form in the sky when the weather in the atmosphere gets really unstable. And that's when he started to tell us about when they usually come along. You get a lot of wind, you get a lot of rain, you'll have a real freak storm. There won't be much lightning and stuff, so we might start heading back anyway. And sure enough, as soon as we started to paddle back for the car, hoping we'd get back in time, the heavens opened and it absolutely flogged down. We couldn't do nothing but paddle under a couple of overhanging trees and sort of just wait it out. We laid all the fishing rods down in the kayaks just in case there was a bit of lightning coming and we didn't want to get fried before any of the trees or anything did. But we just got torrential rain and just crazy winds. And it went on for about 35 minutes of us hiding under these trees trying not to drown. Then just like that, the sun come out, wind's gone, rain's gone, everything. So we thought, fuck it, we'll just keep fishing. We should be right now. There's no more storms coming, check the radar and everything. This time, look, phone service, everything. Not a problem with my phone this time. So we kept an eye on the storm and it was travelling out to sea, so we were fine. So yeah, so we kept fishing on the way back to the car. As you do when you're out fishing with mates, we got a bit carried away. We caught a few fish, chucked them all back. We always do that. We take a couple of photos and chuck them back. We got a bit carried away though, and all of a sudden we were fishing into the dark, and I started to get a bit nervous, but I thought, fuck it, I'll be right. I'm with me mate, with my brother-in-law. We'll be right. Now the brother-in-law, he was fishing down the left-hand side of the river. I was fishing the right-hand bank. We didn't want to have the lights on the water because you spook the fish from the snags, and you got to get as close to the snags as you can without spooking them and that. So when you got a torch on, it just spooks them straight away. So we were fishing along and putting lures in trees. So most of the time we were bloody getting our lures out of the trees and having a laugh about it. And I was just thinking, how good's this? Like, nothing around, nothing to spook me. I feel actually pretty good, and it's night time of fishing. I haven't done this in a real long time. And I hooked one of the lures up in one of the trees and I had to paddle over and I was pulling it out. And this is when I first heard the movement again of a creature. It was right up on the bank. It was probably about 10 metres off the river line, but I heard it move and it was massive. Now, as I was saying, I was on the right-hand side of the river, and this creature was probably 10 metres into the bush and probably 5 metres behind me. So it was right in the bush line, right behind me, obviously watching what I was doing. So I didn't hit the area straight away with the light. So I turned around because I didn't have the lights on. So I turned around and then turned my headlamp on. When I turned it on, it goes to the brightest setting. Blasted the area, didn't see nothing. I thought, it was probably something in the tree. It's just my ears playing tricks on me. There's nothing around. Stop being a pussy. I got the lure out of the tree and I thought, stuff it, and paddled off and over to see what my brother-in-law was doing. So I caught back up to him. At this stage, he was hooked up in a tree and I was having a bit of a giggle, and I kept fishing my right-hand side. And this, I was fishing along, and this is when I realised whatever that thing was back there when I got hooked up in the tree, it's actually following me now. I could actually hear it moving towards me again. And it sounded massive. Now this thing was following me. It was just on the edge of the river, like right on the bank. It sounded huge. It was walking on 2 feet and it was keeping up with me easily. And this bush line, like I was saying, it's that thick. You can't walk through there. A person couldn't walk through. A cow or a horse wouldn't be able to keep up through. There's too many sticks and logs and shit in the way. But this thing, it was keeping up easy. And I started to freak out a bit and I thought, fuck it. I'm paddling over the left-hand side and get over with my brother-in-law and see how he's going with the lure stuck in the tree. Once he got the lure out of the tree and that, I was telling him what had happened. And that's when we both decided we'll turn around and just blast the area with our headlamps. Now his is a lot brighter than mine. A lot better anyway. I always get cheapies and that because I always wreck them or drop them in the river. And I've usually got my spotlight, but as we weren't going till the night time, we were going to be home before dark, I didn't end up bringing it with me. And as the light hit the bush, I heard the creature stop. Didn't take another step after that, and it was just obviously just in the bush enough that we couldn't see it. It was just out of sight. Personally, this is when I freaked out a bit. I started having flashbacks of that previous encounter in the area, the last year, like the year before, with that creature's Bluff charging me. And I said, let's get back to the fucking car and get out of here. So we took off paddling. The whole time we were paddling, I could hear the creature following us. But as I was saying, it was just out of sight, never come out close enough for us to be able to see it. Now we're on the left-hand side of the river, so we were on the opposite side, and it was pretty wide there. But I was still a bit nervous. I thought, we're fucked here. We weren't far from the car. It was probably only a couple hundred metres paddle. And this is when I heard something in the bush right up in front of us on our side of the river this time now. And I thought, what the fuck is going on? So I hit the area with my headlamp, and I thought I seen a pair of eyes. This is when my brother-in-law, he hit the area with the headlamp too, because he'd seen the set of eyes. This is when we both jumped. It was like something out of a movie. One set of eyes, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. End up getting up to, I think it was about 25 sets of eyes, and they just perfectly lit up individually, like I was just flicking on a switch. And we jumped and were freaked out a bit, but there was a big group of chital deer sitting on the edge of the bank. And as I said, the creature was still following off to the right. And this is when it hit me too. 25 sets of eyes, not one are looking at us. They've got two goofy dudes paddling along in a kayak with headlamps on. We'd look like aliens floating in the river, and not one set of eyes were looking at us. They were all fixed on the other side of the river where we could hear this creature following us. We'd both stopped paddling at this stage and we're just floating towards them. And it had been probably 10, 20 seconds, and they were still just staring across the river. Not one of them looked at us. And all of a sudden, one noticed us. They sort of freaked out a bit and took off through the bush. It was really weird. When they took off, they ran off in like a weird ball formation. Sort of like when you see sardines or something like that on TV taking off. It was like they were all trying to protect each other, and they just took off like crazy out of sight. After this happened, never heard that massive creature that was following us on the right hand side of the river walking on 2 feet. Never heard one noise again. It was like it just stopped, disappeared. Was the creature following us? Or was it actually, I was going to say it was he, but was it actually just walking up the river? Maybe it knew where these deer were sleeping and it was getting up, it was going to come across the river and get them? Was it doing that, or was it stalking us again? We don't know, but we got the fuck out of there real quick, back to the car. All I can say, by the time we got back to the cars, like got back to the bank, jumped out, I was absolutely shitting myself, dragged my kayak out, didn't even get it to the car, ran to the car, turned all the lights on, headed them straight towards the bush line, because where we got out, we'd actually had the cars parked away from the bush on the right hand side. So we lit up that bush, so if whatever this creature was, if it was still following us or that, we might have caught sight of it while we were loading up. Loaded up the gear in the kayaks and never heard a twig even snap that whole time, so we got out of there safe and sound. One thing had me stumped, like I was saying, it was a year nearly to the day from the last encounter. There was deer nearby both encounters. Was this creature out hunting deer, or maybe was this creature following us thinking we were going to hurt the deer and trying to protect them? Still don't know to this day. So to get back to the first encounter of the episode, after I'd sort of settled down a couple of days later after looking at the footage and not having anything, I remembered about the website I was looking at with my first encounter I had in the first episode from years ago, with all the Yowies and stuff like that on this site. So I jumped on that and I was having a look at it. Then I decided I did a post about the charge. I had a lot of people comment on it, ask me questions and stuff like that, and I asked a lot of questions and a lot of people explaining to me about stuff that had happened, about it being a bluff charge. It's like what the gorillas do and the big grizzly bears and that do in America. Still didn't explain why I didn't see the creature when it charged me. Some people said I might have been a bit too slow looking up, might have dropped to the ground out of sight, or it could have just jumped out and then jumped back into the bush. A lot of people thought like when it first charged it might have dropped down onto its belly or something, and when I pushed off with a paddle off the bank to get away from it, it might have been when it might have crawled back into the bush away from me. There's another really interesting explanation. Someone said it might have been cloaking, which is a form of them going invisible. Doesn't mean actually going visible like they're magic and stuff, but if you look up videos of chimpanzees and stuff in the bush, and they can sort of just walk away from someone and they'll just sort of camouflage into the bush, and even though they're black and how green the bush is around them and stuff, within a couple of seconds of them sitting still, if you didn't know where they were, you wouldn't actually see them. So maybe this is what happened. Maybe it was just because I hadn't actually seen the creature and didn't know what it was. Like I hadn't looked at it, I mightn't have even recognised it like blending in with the surroundings. The best explanation about the whole encounter would have come around about why I couldn't yell out and the weird noises I was hearing in my ears. A couple of the guys started telling me about infrasound. Infrasound's a noise or a call or any sort of sound that's under 20 hertz. It's under the capabilities of our ears actually hearing it. You can't actually pick up on infrasound unless you've got a special machine that can actually pick up on the hertz. Sometimes though, if it's right on that 20 hertz, you might pick up on a little bit, be a bit of a hum or a little bit of a muffled noise, but it can actually affect everyone. Everything from not being able to speak, getting a headache, you might get sick, you might spew. People have even mentioned about shitting themselves, a whole lot of like brain fuzz. And yeah, it's a lot of symptoms, a lot of different symptoms of it. And if you look it up, it's actually pretty interesting. There's information about how they can use it for riots or military use and stuff like that, but it all came from people researching animals. And there's two animals I know about that actually use infrasound, and that's elephants and tigers. They've done research with the tigers, and they've actually picked up infrasound in their real soft purrs and even growls and stuff like that. And they've actually had the devices put on tigers, and when they're out hunting in the wild, they actually use infrasound while they're hunting. And it sort of explains why a 250 kilo cat can sneak through a jungle with howler monkeys and all this other shit around and still get still get food, still kill stuff without being caught. Now when they do this growl and the infrasound hits the prey that they're after, it can actually paralyze them, and to the point that they just stand there, freeze, and they can be looking at them while the tigers come and pounce. Like I said, 250 kilo cat, I know they're a cat, they can be sneaky and they can stalk and stuff like that, but it still explains how they can sneak through and get a little deer or a rabbit or anything else they're hunting in the bush without setting the howler monkeys off, or even the creature that they're hunting hearing them and taking off. The whole infrasound subject, it was really made a lot of sense. Like I was saying, I knew it wasn't from fear, I couldn't yell out. I paddled right up to the edge there, stood up, was looking around with my torch and everything. If I was that scared, I would have stayed in the middle of the river and stayed away from the bank. So I know it wasn't from fear. I just couldn't physically yell out. And this is the best explanation that I've come up with, and there's nothing else that really makes sense. But still, why did it happen? Why did this creature not grab me? It charged to within a metre. It could have easily grabbed me, but it didn't. Why did I get hit with the infrasound? I couldn't yell or anything like that. Couldn't yell for help. Couldn't even yell out to try and scare something. Still didn't make sense. Like, what did I do? I must have done something wrong, and it wanted to scare me off. It could have grabbed me easily, but it didn't. It just tried to scare me. Was the creature just fucking with me? Was it just bored, been laying around all day, not worrying about anything, and then seeing me come around at night and thought, yep, we'll scare this little fucker? I don't know, but then I got a reply about why it might have charged me. Someone said, the smokes. And no, before you get into it, creatures aren't anti-smokers. They're not like the old dude down the pub that's just recently quit, and if you smoke near him, he gets the shits and wants you to go away. Remember what I was saying? At the time of the encounter, there was massive bushfires all over eastern Australia. When this creature seen me light the smoke up, did it think I was trying to start a fire? Did it just freak out because of the flame and it charged me? Considering the fires were like in the area within 5 to 10 kilometres of this spot the creature was at. So maybe had this creature come from further into the bush where the fire was raging at the time. It might have thought I was trying to start a fire, and that's why it didn't grab me. It just tried to scare me, and then once it realised what I was doing, that's why it left me alone. Like I was saying, it must have been laying in the area right next to that track that I'd walked past to get into the water. If it wanted to get me, could have just got me there and then, but no, it must have just laid there and watched me go by. And that's the closest I've got to any explanation as to why it happened and why I wasn't just taken out when it could have easily got to me. Like I said, could have been because of the fire, it could have been just because it was some sort of trickster. Might have been just fucking with me or something like that. Or it could have been trying to protect the deer that were further up from it. I still don't know to this day. As I was saying, I haven't gone fishing that early again in the mornings. I wait till the sun comes up. And even after that second encounter I had at the same area with my brother-in-law, I still felt a lot safer going in the mornings as long as I waited till the sun come up. But this all ended probably about 2 weeks after the encounter with my brother-in-law in December 2020. But I'll get into that on the next episode. I actually had 2 encounters with a creature, which I believe is the Dogman, on another river system. It's probably about half an hour from my house and about 25 minutes from the main street of Sydney. And this was broad daylight between 6 o'clock in the morning and 7:30, 8 o'clock. Yeah, it was crazy. I'll get into that in the next episode. Until then, I've actually done a few podcasts on these encounters. I done one with Cade Moyer on the Believe pod, and Paranormal Portal with Brent Thomas. I got into him a bit, but so if you want to check them out until next episode when I get into it a bit more, go right ahead. They're all on YouTube or Spotify, stuff like that. Now, in both these encounters, one of the encounters I actually got photos of this creature. Another encounter I actually recorded the whole time on my GoPro, and you actually hear the roars of the creature. So you can go on my YouTube account now and have a look. They're all on there. There's actually a video when I've had an encounter with a big cat. Now, I'll do an episode on that one day because I've had 3 encounters now over the years. So I'll use that as another episode coming up. As I was saying, in the next episode, I'll go into the 2 encounters I had with the Dogman in Western Sydney. But until then, guys, hope you've enjoyed my encounter with the Yowie in Western Sydney, and don't forget to keep safe out there. We're not alone. Cheers, guys.